Hey everyone, Chris Carter here of the Locked On Steelers podcast. We got a lot of your questions we get to today, and a lot of them revolve around the Steelers' plan for how they're trying to get back to being Super Bowl contenders and finding that franchise quarterback. We'll talk about those questions here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. More on them later. All right, Steelers fans, we got a lot of your questions you want to get to. But first, let's acknowledge some of the things that happened yesterday that are pertinent to today. So one of the things that was the rumored thing that could happen about Aaron Rodgers and the saga was that it could finally end, the Wednesday night when Aaron Rodgers came and if he showed up at Pat McAfee's show in Pittsburgh, which was at PPG Paints Arena, and that did not happen. And so Aaron Rodgers is still going. And so we're still probably looking at him going into maybe even draft week before even agreeing to officially sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Maybe it's been done in the back room and they're waiting to announce it. Who knows? But that will still continue. So that's that's one thing that happened there. The other thing I want to address before we get to your calls, and that'll lead into our first call, is the hysteria that happened over TJ Watt posting an Instagram story. Not even it was just a photo. It was one of those temporary things on Instagrams. I sound old when I say Instagrams, but when he posted a simple picture, TJ Watt, of himself just chucking up the deuces sign, something that he does a lot. If you looked at his picture, shout out our boy Smitty, Zachary Smith. He does the afternoon drive podcast with Alan over at SteelersNow.com. He posted, he was one of the people that posted, like, he does this all the time. But people saw that picture on Instagram and were just like, oh my God, TJ Watt, what's out? He's getting out of here. He doesn't want to be with the Steelers. This is him chucking up the deuces to Pittsburgh. And I was just like, here we go again. We got nothing to talk about, so we just driving up the hysteria. And I remind people, don't buy into that kind of stuff. Like, look, man, if it is, we'll find out later. I don't treat that as something serious. TJ Watt, I don't think everything I've seen is that TJ Watt wants to stick with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers want him to stick around. They're going to pay him to stick around. That's going to happen. So, I know there's some people out there that still believe that the trade is a thing that could happen. So, that's it. But I just remind people, the Steelers do have a plan to get back to being Super Bowl contenders. Again, they're contenders in their division. They're contenders to get in the playoffs. And they've been in the playoffs for the last 5 years. They haven't won playoff games. But to get to that hurdle, they have to keep building, and they have to stick to the plan that they have in place to get there. They have to manage things well. And if you delineate from that plan, if you start doing things randomly, that's when you lose focus as an organization. That's when you miss out on opportunities to build upon the things that you're trying to put together. And then you become a mishmash organization. You end up being like the Browns, the Jets, all these organizations that just do this for eternity and never see a Super Bowl championship or real results that turn into, the dynasty that you want to build. Again, I think the Steelers are building towards trying to be where they were when they drafted Ben Roethlisberger in 2004, where they had no line, they had playmakers on offense, they had a defense, and they could just plug in a young quarterback and rock with it. And I think that there's a lot of the questions we'll get here today that center around sticking to that plan. But one of those questions does involve TJ Watt, because people keep bringing up the idea of trading him. Here's Brian in Lakeland, Florida, who asked about what that compensation could be like. Take it away, Brian.
Hey there, Chris. This is Brian down here in Lakeland, Florida. Yeah, I wanted to give you a call because, man, with this TJ stuff, I'm not sure what we're going to do. I'm hearing stuff about trades. We got the contract issues. I know you adjusted a little bit today on the pod. So I wanted to ask, man, what would it look like if we were to go ahead and trade TJ, during this draft, or even maybe next year, whatever the case is, what that kind of would look like for us, if it's something that we would do. Now, granted, I don't think that's something we would do. It doesn't seem like, the Steeler way. He's a Steeler through and through. I don't see us getting rid of him. But I think if the right offer comes across the desk, I think Umar might do it. So I wanted to talk with you and, kind of see what that would look like, if it's something we could do. Thanks, man. I love the podcast. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. As always, you can call like Brian did by calling in at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. We try to get your questions on the show. There's a lot of y'all that call in. We're going to get to several of these calls today. We're going to keep trying to work more and more in as we get closer to the draft to make sure you get your pre-draft questions in. But Brian, so to get to your thoughts here. Now, I addressed this with Alan earlier in the week on our Tuesday episode when we talked about this, and what you would, for me, if I'm the Steelers, I am not taking anything less than 2 firsts and a second, and 2 firsts and 2 seconds, 3 firsts, whatever it's going to be. It's got to be more than just 2 first-round picks. It's got to be some serious compensation, because to me, TJ Watt is still that guy. He is still, I know that some people are saying, oh, he had 11.5 sacks here. He's got it down. He's on the downturn. A lot of people that are saying that are the same people that were saying, not even a year ago, back in the summer, Cam Hayward's done. Dude, he's cooked, man. Why are you paying him? Why are you giving this extension? And then he becomes a first-team All-Pro DT and reminds everyone who he is. And I think that's what TJ Watt is probably going to do this season. And I think the Steelers believe in him. I think he believes in himself. They believe in each other. They're going to work out this extension. But if there was to be compensation, it would need to be along the lines of 3 first-round picks, in my opinion, because I still think he is that kind of player. But again, as Alan Saunders pointed out, and we talked about, and we did a little experiment on our Tuesday episode, TJ Watt is better than most first-round picks, which is why it would take multiple firsts. I'm not just talking about, you're like, oh, just get a first. We could use that first to build something there. If you went back and you looked at every first overall pick for the past 15, go back to 2010, he's better than all but maybe 2 of them. Again, last year, Caleb Williams, no. Bryce Young, better than him. Travon Walker was supposed to be the truth at defensive end. He's a decent pass rusher. He's not in TJ Watt's caliber. Trevor Lawrence, no. Joe Burrow, that's your one. You could say Joe Burrow. Kyler Murray, no. Baker Mayfield, no. Myles Garrett, those guys are in the same vein. I'd say that's an equal situation right there. Jared Goff, no. James Winston, no. Jadeveon Clowney, absolutely not. Eric Fisher, no. Andrew Luck could have been. His career got, shortened because of injuries. But so in that terms, no. Cam Newton, MVP quarterback. Maybe you could say that. Maybe. So, and then Sam Bradford in 2010, absolutely not. So all that to say, we just went back through 15 years of first overall picks, not first round picks, first overall picks. And the large majority of them aren't in TJ Watt's caliber, close to them. And that's where my point is that if you're giving up TJ Watt, it can't just be for a first. It has to be for multiple firsts. And I'm not sure if a team does that right now. And again, I'm not so sure TJ wants to go. I'm not sure that the organization wants him to go. To Brian's point, this would be very anti-Steeler. This would be going against what you're trying to do. This would be taking a leader out of the locker room that really needs leadership right now and putting again, what Ben Roethlisberger, when he walked into the Steelers organization, there was leadership across the board. You had Joey Porter on defense. Trip Polamalu wasn't a leader yet because he was still young himself, but you had Jerome Bettis on offense. You had Hines Ward. You had, Alan Finnegan. You had established guys that could say, hey, this is the culture. This is what it takes, buddy. We're going to set the stage for you so that you can develop into it and eventually become a leader. That's what the Steelers need. I don't think they're getting rid of a guy like TJ Watt, because I do think that there's a big part of that there that's not happening. So again, the trade, it would need to be insane trade compensation for the Steelers to give up TJ Watt. I just don't see it. And again, part of it's because they have a plan, and they have a plan at quarterback. They have a plan for the team overall, and it's sticking to that plan that it's going to get them through this and get them through this period where they're a good team. They're good enough to make the playoffs, but they're not a great team. And that's where they want to get to. And it's going to take continuing to build different parts of the roster so that you can take that big shot at quarterback. But is that big shot at quarterback realistic? We're going to talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We got some people who don't necessarily believe it's even possible to trade up and go get that quarterback next year in the 2026 NFL draft, because that's what I've been saying all along. It's not about this year's quarterback draft class. It's about next year's quarterback draft class. Some people don't believe in that. I'll take that to task next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, remind you this show is brought to you by Game Time. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd, witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. That's why getting tickets shouldn't be stressful, and the best place to not be stressed out while getting tickets is Game Time. They'll come in, make it easier to find even last-minute seats for unbeatable prices. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It goes through all the current deals, finds the best things for you, so you don't waste time searching through endless ticket listings. The curated deals that it provides through the app make it super simple to find great tickets at a great price. No more sifting through thousands of options. They also have a seat view feature that is a game changer. Before you even hit buy, you can see exactly what the view will be from your seat while you look in it from the venue. It's so reassuring, and the best part, you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee, because if you find a better deal somewhere else, Game Time will refund you 110% of the difference of those prices. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellations options if something comes up. Ready to make your next event even better? Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL. You get $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We're back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. I wanted to get to a lot of questions today, so I'm going to try to run through these a bit faster. That TJ Watt one, I wanted to re-hype into the understanding of why I just don't think it's the move. There's some people that just say, yeah, just trade him for draft picks and it'll work out, and just no. But there's some people who talk about, hey, those draft picks that they've amassed for next year, is that even possible? Is it worth even speculating that they can be even used to trade up and go get a quarterback when everybody wants to go get a quarterback? That was Nate's question from Tampa Bay, Florida. Nate, take it away.
Hi, Chris. Nate from Tampa here. I know you're probably tired of all the QB talk, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on the current discussion about the 2026 draft and how we'll have enough picks to trade up and get our guy. If the Steelers maintain their winning streak in 2026, there will be a ton of QB-needy teams in front of them that could hold, top 3 picks or picks they don't want to trade out of. Teams like the Browns, the Giants, Saints, maybe the Colts, maybe the Jets, or just some other QB situations that don't work out this season. So I think that there's a real scenario like last year's draft where the top 3 picks are all QBs, and the Steelers could miss out on all top 3 guys. I wanted to get your thoughts on if the Steelers shouldn't just bank on getting their guy next year and what the plan should be in 2025 to address that possibility. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Nate. As always, you can call in like Nate did, 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. Thanks again to everyone who asks. Now, to Nate's point, there are going to be QB needy teams. There always are. It's the NFL. If you don't got your franchise quarterback, most people don't. You're looking for your franchise quarterback. Now, to answer your question, Nate, yes, last year 3 quarterbacks went at the very top of the draft class. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, all in succession in the top 3 picks there. That doesn't necessarily always happen though, because there's often teams that also just want to get a top tackle, want to get a top receiver, want to get a top edge rusher, a top player, a top cornerback sometimes slips in there. But I think the thing is about next year's draft class is that you can most likely expect some of these guys to be in that mix, and that there's enough of them that you can be in the mix there and it not come down to you're just trying to trade up against 2 teams. And I think that's where the Steelers are banking on next year, for there to be at least 3-4 options that they think are legitimate first round quarterback guys there. And that's where I do think it's possible for this to work. Now, there's some people out there that question, like, hey, if you're going up against guys that other teams that are doing this, you're going to have to trade up, and how are you going to trade up and get a top 10 pick? Now, I remind people again all the time, Patrick Mahomes was the 10th overall pick in his draft class. The Chiefs traded up from 27 to 10th to get him. I think they swapped first round picks. They gave up an extra first round pick and an extra second round pick. I think that that's a reasonable price to go up and do that type of thing. Now, if you use overthecap.com's trade evaluation chart that assigns point numbers to each pick to show you, like, hey, this is the idea of if you add up these other picks and the point values they have, that's how you get to trade up for a certain pick. If you trade it up to, say, the 5th overall pick in the NFL draft, at least for the chart and how it values there, from 21. Let's just say the Steelers finish 21 next year like they did this year. They've been hovering around that for the past several years. 21 would get you 1,457 points in their system. That's about 700 and some change less than what the 5th overall pick's points would be. So 700 less some change. That's basically a mid 3rd round pick right there that you're talking about as far as the point value. So like, I think it's very doable. But again, quarterbacks, it's going to raise the price a little bit. But again, I think that what you're talking about here is you're swapping firsts. You might throw in an extra 1st round pick. You might throw in an extra 1st round pick and some change. But now you can do so and probably throw in an extra 1st round pick, like your 2027 1st rounder, and then throw in some comp picks like that. If they with Dan Moore, you expect they're going to get a 3rd round draft pick. If Justin Fields plays the whole season and Russell Wilson plays the whole season, maybe that they get 2 3rd round draft picks. Well, there's a lot of potential there. They might have a 4th round draft pick, but then you could throw more on top of that and still keep enough picks next year, even if you trade up and give away your 2nd round pick that you have day 2 and day 3 picks that can help supplement your draft next year around your quarterback. So I say all that to say, I think it's very doable. But I look back and I see, if you want to see other examples of quarterbacks that were in quarterback heavy drafts that were taken outside of the top 3, because I don't think it's always going to happen that way. You look at other draft classes where quarterback was kind of different. I go back to the 2017 NFL draft where Mitch Trubisky was the first quarterback off the board. He was picked 2nd overall, and that was a big trade up to go get him by the Bears. That was the same draft class where Patrick Mahomes went 10th overall to the Chiefs. Deshaun Watson went 12th overall to the Houston Texans. Now, Deshaun Watson, of course, now doesn't seem like a great option, but back then he was the hype. He was a national championship quarterback. He was consistently just dangerous at Clemson. And in his first years with the Texans, he looked like the truth. He looked like he was building to something. That's why it looked like a big deal when the Browns got him. And then, of course, all the massage parlor stuff happened, and then he fell off, and now he is who he is. But at the time, that was a major pick. But again, most 1st round quarterbacks don't work out in the first place. So that happens there. So you look at that. I'm not even going to bring up Lamar Jackson as part of this equation, 32nd overall, but just looking at guys that were expected to be top level quarterbacks and where you were able to get them, it's very doable. The very next year after the Mahomes year, that was another quarterback heavy draft class. Baker Mayfield went 1st overall. Josh Allen went 7th overall. And there were a lot of people that believed that he could be a superstar quarterback, but because of that, Sam Darnold, remember, went before him at 3rd overall. So I even skipped one there. And then I think what was Josh Rosen was part of that class. That was a complete bust. But you had 1, 2, 3, 4 quarterbacks in the top 10 that year. The Steelers, with the draft pick, again, if you amass enough draft compensation this year or for next year with those comp picks, you can trade up to get to get the 7th overall to get your Josh Allen. And who knows, that might be Nico Iamaleava. That probably isn't Arch Manning, but it might be Nico Iamaleava. It might be Lenore Sellers out of South Carolina. It might be someone else. Cade Klubnik out of Clemson. I really like something that he does. I don't think he's a 1st round pick. I'm not saying that they should trade up to go get him, but there's always crazy things that can happen that can shake up a draft class, and some people can believe that that's their guy at quarterback. I think, again, when we're talking about the plan and focusing on the plan is to go get that quarterback and next year. And I think that they probably have their eyes on a few guys that could be their guy. And I think that's where you'll see Omar Khan make his aggressive play to get his Kevin Colbert, this is my quarterback type of pick. And he hasn't done that yet. I think that this will be his chance to go and do that. And we'll see, how that progresses there. But again, Nate, I like your question and checking, is it possible? Is it even realistic with the options around them? And I think it's important to note, it is much better to try to develop your own quarterback than to try and develop someone else's quarterback, because everyone's going to say, oh, well, Geno Smith, you could just do that all the time. That rarely works out. And that was a great point brought up in this question here by Mr. Dukes out of Detroit. Mr. Dukes, take it away.
Yeah, this is Mr. Dukes from Detroit, Michigan. My question is this, and can you answer this? I know that Justin Fields is gone, Russell Wilson is gone. But the whole thing I would wonder why everybody was saying the Steelers wanted to go with Justin Fields and develop him Why is it that people think you can just develop a guy into an NFL quarterback? If he do show tools, teams will see the tools and develop them. But I yet to see a quarterback that be in the league 3 to 4 years and develop into a starter. Geno Smith them was just on bad teams. They had the tools, but they just didn't have the talent around them. Even though you had talent around some people, they don't develop. Jameis Winston, you can go all the way down, even going with Zach Wilson. So ask me that question. Where did we develop a quarterback in history that showed that he was not a passer, but became one? Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Dukes, for your call. As always, 412-223-6644. Get your question on the air. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. Mr. Dukes, I believe in just, I want to make sure I understand your question. When you're saying we, you're saying anyone out there in the history of the NFL, not just the Pittsburgh Steelers, because you brought up all those other teams. It is very rare to have reclamation quarterbacks projects that are such a raving success that you could say, yeah, you developed this quarterback, especially coming from someone else, and you look at the NFL history, there are some success stories. Again, Geno Smith is one of them. You look at Geno Smith's early part of his career, he started with the Jets. It was terrible. He went 8-8 his first season, threw 12 touchdowns, 21 interceptions. The next year, 13 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. They went 3-10. He was benched eventually and eventually bounced around the NFL, and it didn't look great. And then it took until he was 32 years old in 2022 for him to become the starting quarterback that became a Pro Bowler and to look good. And it was in a Seahawks offense that just did work for him. And it did work for him. And I think that, like you said, he was in a better situation and that helped there. But it took a long time for that to happen. And that wasn't something that was, orchestrated by years of prep. It was just, hey, it started to work out in Seattle. And there are very few quarterbacks that, if you look over the years, there's guys that have flare-ups, there's guys that have good moments, but there's very few quarterbacks that you say, like, you developed for a long time, and then just they became the guy after not being the guy. Like, Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre for years, but Aaron Rodgers was a first-round pick, and a lot of people thought that guy was going to be the guy when he came up, and it turned out he was. And now the Steelers are where they are and trying to get him when he's 42 years old. But then there's other guys out there, like you think, like Jake Delhomme. Jake Delhomme didn't start off his career too great. If you don't know who Jake Delhomme is, he was the quarterback for the Panthers in their first iteration when they were really good after Kerry Collins. But in the early 2000s, when they went up against the Patriots in the Super Bowl, he was the quarterback that got them there. And he had some decent years. Now, he didn't have some prolific quarterback numbers, different era in the NFL as well, but he became a better quarterback. But you think of other guys like Rich Gannon for the Raiders back in the early 2000s. I think the big one that everyone always thinks of is Kurt Warner. Kurt Warner was a backup who played in the CFL, eventually got a shot in the NFL and took off. Kurt Warner was also, to Mr. Duke's point, got to play in an offense with Marshall Faulk, a really good offensive line, Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, just legend all the way down in a really good offensive system. And it worked for him. And then after that group kind of broke apart and he became a backup again in the NFL, he didn't make his hay again until what happened? He joined an offense with one of the greatest receivers of all time in Larry Fitzgerald, where he had one of the greatest years of all time. If you go back and look at what he did in the playoffs that year, that of course was stopped by the Steelers in Super Bowl 43 when they won their 6th Super Bowl. But you look at that, like the very few names that we're going through here: Warner, Gannon, Delhomme, Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield could be kind of one right now. Again, he's first overall pick and it bounced around several teams and eventually found his hey there. But again, he has really good receivers in Tampa Bay. It is very hard to find those. So when people say, oh, the Steelers, why didn't they just go all in on Justin Fields and just commit to developing him? I think it's because it's like, look, to Mr. Duke's point, look, there's tools there. There's certain things there, but there's a reason why sometimes guys just don't develop right away. And I think that when you're looking at it, you want to find that it guy that you can develop, but has a higher ceiling and a higher floor to work with. And that's why, again, I think the Steelers are sticking to their plan. Now, again, if it was me, I would have tried to keep Justin Fields at least for another 2 years, because he would have been at least your bridge quarterback that could have gotten you the point and given you a fail safe in case your next quarterback didn't work out. Didn't work out that way. The Jets offered him more money. That's neither here nor there now. But I think Mr. Dukes brings up a great point. A lot of people just assume you can just develop a quarterback out of nowhere and everything will be fine. It very rarely works that way. Heck, the first round picks very rarely work that way. The the reclamation projects work that way even fewer times or even less often. So we got to take another quick break. When we come back, a lot more of your questions here about specific players. We'll get to those next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our show here today. One of the main reasons why I continue to say the Steelers should be drafting for quarterback next year is because I don't believe in this crop of quarterbacks as a starting franchise quarterback class. I think Cam Ward could be that. But after that, I think Shedeur Sanders, Jaxson Dart, Jalen Milroe. I think those are guys that are all solid backup quarterback options. Will Howard, the same in the same vein. They're all solid backup quarterback prospects that if they develop, maybe they can turn into, starting bridge quarterbacks that are playing to a system and doing well. But I don't think that they have the caliber of tools that make them superstar players. But hey, there's probably people say, hey, what if they are? What if there's the possibility that they could be? That's what Parker from Logan, Utah asked. Here's Parker. Take it away.
Hey, Chris. This is Parker from Logan, Utah. Just had a thought. I know there's a lot of hype around Jaxson Dart, and I know a lot of the people in the Steelers media are not for Jaxson Dart. Here's my thing. I know that QBs are never a guarantee, as we saw with Kenny Pickett. If people are in the organization believe in Dart, why not give him a shot or invest in one of these quarterbacks? And then with all those comp picks next year, you'll have, a lot of leverage to go trade for someone like a Jeremiah Smith in the first round. And, that gives you an opportunity to maybe get off a George Pickens contract or something like that. Or just keep those comp picks and, have a lot more, building blocks for next year. Anyways, thanks. Love the show.
Thank you, Parker. As always, we appreciate questions. 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute. Okay, so let's talk about Jaxson Dart. If someone in the organization does believe in Jaxson Dart, if the whole organization believes in Jaxson Dart, yeah, you know what? Go for him. If you do the research and you think that he is your guy, you go and get your guy. I have a very strong feeling they've done that research and he is not their guy. I think that they like him as a mid-round guy. I think that they're like, hey, you know what? If he's there in the third, they'll take a look at him. But I think, just my opinion, from what I've heard, what I've seen, all the clues that I've been picking up, I don't think that they believe in Jaxson Dart as a first-round quarterback option. I think that there's more to that. When I look at Jaxson Dart, I don't see him as a first-round quarterback option. I see him as more of a mid-round guy that if he puts a lot of things together, he could become, a good bridge quarterback, a guy that can kind of develop into the NFL. But I don't think that he has it all there to make him this bona fide first round pick. And I don't think the Steelers do either. And I think that's the reason, Parker, is that just when you hear me say those things like that, it's often because either I've heard a few things that have suggested that that's what I think that they see him as, or I see him that way, as not being a franchise quarterback that you want to take in the first round, or it's both. And so in a situation, Parker, if Omar Khan has done some research and there's some stuff out there that I don't know about Jaxson Dart, that he's going to become the next Patrick Mahomes, or he's going to shock the world with how good he is, you know what? Go get him. Prove me wrong. I'm very honest when I look at guys, and if I see guys, I'm like, hey, you know what? I didn't think that guy was going to be all that, and he is balling out of his mind. You know what? I will happily say I was wrong if I'm wrong. But like for example, I didn't think Baker Mayfield could be this good in Tampa Bay. I thought that after his stint with the Browns, he was done. I give him full credit. He has balled out and become a good quarterback with the Buccaneers. And he had his moments in Cleveland, but you can see him being so much more consistent in Tampa Bay. I thought the same thing of Geno Smith. I thought that he was done after he got his jaw broken by a teammate in New York and all the things. But he picked it back up. And there's times where you're like, hey, you know what? I was wrong about that guy. But when it comes to Jaxson Dart, it's just like, hey, you know what? There's also plenty of times I've been right about staying away from certain players. And Jaxson Dart, again, I don't think he's a terrible player. I just don't think that he's a first round quarterback type of guy. And we talked about that with Nick Farabaugh yesterday. So thank you for your question, Logan. But so to answer your question, if they believe he is, yeah, go get him. I don't think that they do, and I don't believe he is, which is why I tell people I don't think they should try to do that again unless it's a middle round pick. But it was interesting that you brought up George Pickens there, because George Pickens, this is an interesting question that I have slightly broached, but I wanted to take a little bit of time at the end of the show to fully look at. Here's Chet from Delaware with a good George Pickens question.
Hey, Chris, this is Chet. I'm calling from Delaware. I was just wondering, what do you think is the chances George Pickens is going to get an extension with the Steelers? I know so far he's been pretty low, but I'm thinking with this plan to get a quarterback either this year or next year, we're not going to have to pay a quarterback, so there's going to be a lot of money out there. I think they're going to pay GP, and before we have to pay the young QB, we might trade him then. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think of that? Love listening to the show, man. Have a good one.
I see what you're putting down there, Chet. I get what you're doing here, because I don't think it's, like you said, I think it's a low chance of this happening. However, I think I brought this up on the show of how, if it was to happen, there is a roadmap to get there. It's why I don't think the Steelers are necessarily going to trade George Pickens unless someone comes in with a haul and says, hey, we'll give you a first, we'll give you a high second or something like that. And the Steelers are like, well, that's tough to pass up because he only has 1 year left on his deal. But if George Pickens goes into this season and with DK Metcalf, they become a really dangerous pair of wide receivers, and you see him really put his game together, he makes a lot less mistakes, he makes less penalties, you see him mature a decent bit. I don't put it past the Pittsburgh Steelers to find a way to keep him and say, you know what, we're just going to make him and DK a pair. You know, it might not even be an extension, it might be a franchise tag. But if he becomes that guy, to your point here, Chet, if the Steelers really believe that George Pickens and DK Metcalf can be a 1-2 punch of terror, again, we would call them on the show the weapons of past destruction. That would be, I like that name. I came up with that myself. But, you know, if they become the weapons of past destruction, if the two of them light it up with Aaron Rodgers or Mason Rudolph or whoever's quarterback this year, and you go get your rookie quarterback, and you're like, you know what? We want that rookie quarterback to have this same duo, because if they light it up, and this quarterback can feed off of that energy, it could make their path and their ascension to the NFL that much better. And that's where I do think you might be onto something, that if George Pickens plays well enough, the Steelers say, you know what? We get to play somebody on the offensive side of the ball. Because if you look at 2026, if you throw in a TJ Watt extension, even with that, they're gonna have money to be able to spend on several different positions. And especially if they draft that rookie quarterback next year, you're probably keeping that rookie quarterback. You're probably keeping that middle round quarterback that you drafted this year, and you probably have Mason Rudolph. So you're right. You're not spending big on quarterback. And that's why I think they're building right now. They built their offensive line. They want to keep investing in the defense. They want to make the certain weaknesses they had a little bit stronger so that the defense can be a more complete unit next year. They want to make sure the playmakers are right on offense, so that if you get that guy and you do hit that quarterback pick, and you bring them to the NFL, all of a sudden you don't have to wonder who his top two receivers are, because you've locked them down. You're paying them because you don't have to pay your quarterback. You don't have to wonder if your offensive line is going to hold up, because you've invested in it. And again, to me, that is one of the biggest stories of this year is building that offensive line, and not building because they've got the personnel, but they need it to develop. If that offensive line does not develop this year, and we're not talking about in 2026 that this offensive line looks a lot better, there's going to be some big questions and some big problems with this team, including with Mike Tomlin. And so, but again, I think that's the vision here, is you want to set yourself up for that. So Chet, to your point, I think George Pickens could still be part of that vision. But the question will be, does he show maturity? Do they want him to be in the locker room long term? I know that they believe in his talents, because they do believe they keep putting faith in that, hey, he can be that playmaker, he can be that guy. But they've got to find a way. They've got to find a way to make him and Metcalf work together. They've got to find to make it work in their offense, and they've got to find a way for the offense to work as a whole, so that when you get that quarterback, you're plugging them in, and there's already a system in place for them to just kind of play to the strengths of your system. Let the quarterback find his own strengths, and then develop him into being your future franchise quarterback. But Pickens could be part of that if it works out. Now, again, there's several other things that could come into play. Someone could see George Pickens and like, you know what, I can make him my number one wide receiver. I'll trade you this second round pick or this for like something crazy for George Pickens, and I want to make him the guy. And the Steelers might say, you know what, that's worth it. Because we can get another guy. George Pickens was a second round pick, and if you can get something like that, I totally get that. Or let's say even like mid this year, George Pickens is lighting it up, and then someone does want to get desperate and say like, hey, like we're going to come in with a first round pick because we think that he is the guy to make us Super Bowl champions. And if the Steelers are like, hey, you know what, first round pick, that's more we can work with that. That's where I think that could happen. So I think there's plenty of roadblocks. There's also the chance that George Pickens doesn't mature and doesn't do the things you wanted to do. And then you're like, you know what, George, we don't want to keep you around because you didn't become the guy that we hoped that you would over 4 years. So we'll let you hit free agency. And if he hits free agency, he's going to probably get a big contract somewhere. And that's probably going to lead to a third round comp pick. So to your point, Chet, I think that there's a chance that it could be there, but if it's not, I think the Steelers, they're willing to try to take the windfall for whatever they get from George Pickens, as long as he doesn't tank his value this upcoming season. It could be there, but I would not close the door entirely to an extension. I just don't think it's likely because the Steelers haven't been a team to pay 2 wide receivers big money at the same time, which is what it would probably take to keep a George Pickens. However, to your point, they got the rookie quarterback and they got a low-paying quarterback room. Maybe that's where you splurge, is keeping 2 playmaker wide receivers on your offense. Maybe you draft another young wide receiver this year, or you hope that Calvin Austin sticks around for a cheaper contract, or that Roman Wilson develops, or something along those lines. Maybe that's the ticket there. But again, it's sticking to that plan, and George Pickens, I don't think, is completely out of that plan just yet. We answered a lot of your questions. There were about 2 other questions I had lined up for this show that I didn't even have time to get to. We'll try to get to them as the weeks, as the days roll on here, getting us close to the NFL draft. I'm your host, Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. You can find me on all your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all Monday through Friday episodes. You can also find me on social media at all the different handles, Twitter, all different social medias, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all the things, same handle every place, at Carter Critiques. You can also read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. My top 100 board will be coming out very, very soon. It's basically complete. We're just working through publishing it now, and we'll discuss that on this show moving forward very soon. So stick to it here. We'll have another episode tomorrow right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.